What urban legends do you believe in? I believe it because I want to believe it. Story of a bloke who nearly every day would go for 2-hour-long walks around the countryside with his dog. One day he passed away. The bloke's wife thought it would be nice for the dog, who was now missing his daily walks, to go out on the same route in which her late husband used to take. They set off. But after 2 minutes of walking through the village, the dog then habitually takes a turn left and heads to the pub where it had presumed it was going. Saw this on Reddit and have seen it a few times elsewhere, but I'd like to believe it to be true. The cops showed up to a college Halloween party to bust some underage drinkers. The cops approached one kid dressed as Jack Sparrow, and when they asked to see his ID he ran to the balcony and said, "Gentlemen, you will always remember this day as the day you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow," and then he jumped off the balcony on the second floor. He landed on the hard ground below and broke his leg. Still got the ticket, but is a legend now. That our thylacine, Tasmanian tigers, are still alive, not extinct, and roaming in certain parts of the state. To be honest, this is one of the nicer ones I'd want to believe. In Japan, Santa Claus is called Annual Gift Man and he lives on the moon. My dad told me about this time a store in Japan, trying to cash in on the whole Christmas thing, had a window display of Santa on a crucifix. The Boilerman, the Black Sergeant. Very famous urban legend from where I am from. Very popular with us kids back in the day. Story goes that during the Troubles in Northern Ireland there was a police sergeant who had links to paramilitary groups and often leaked confidential information to these groups to assist in terrorist attacks. Rival factions jumped him one day and stripped him, put him in a boiler suit and stuck him in an abandoned industrial chimney and lit a fire at the bottom so that he died from smoke inhalation. To this day a man is seen roaming the woods near the industrial chimney dressed in a boiler suit, his face burnt and blackened and covered in soot. People have gone missing in the forest, and later locals reported groups of people stumbling around the forest dressed in boiler suits. Gang initiation of driving at night without lights on and killing the first person who flashes their high beams. I know it can't be real, but I always think of this when I see a car without lights on. In my previous town, if you flash your high beams at someone, it means that there's a cop ahead and it's a warning for them to slow down. The one where hotel cruise room cleaners use your toothbrush to perform unhygienic acts if you treat them like shit, pun intended. Because my mum used to work on cruise ships and knows people who did it. She's seen photos of them doing it. Try and be nice as possible to everyone, guys. Especially people who handle your food or sanitary equipment. I never understood being an asshole to workers. Like there's no point. Even if you needed a reason to be nice. Well, who's to say that when you're in line getting food they might put a bit extra for you? Or if you're getting a pizza the worker might give you the nicer one instead of the ducked up one. Or they might just say duck the change and give you $1 instead of 95 cents. Plus you get to make their day a little bit better. Isn't that NPU in itself? This is the legend of our neighbouring country Wales in the UK. Pretty sad but believable. Enjoy. According to legend, the stone monument in the field marks the resting place of Gelert, the faithful hound of the medieval Welsh Prince Llewellyn the Great. The story, as written on the tombstone, reads: in the 13th century Llewellyn, Prince of North Wales, had a palace at Bedd Gelert. One day he went hunting without Gelert, the faithful hound, who was unaccountably absent. On Llewellyn's return the truant, stained and smeared with blood, joyfully sprang to meet his master. The prince, alarmed, hastened to find his son, and saw the infant's cot empty, the bedclothes and floor covered with blood. The frantic father plunged his sword into the hound's side, thinking it had killed his heir. The dog's dying yell was answered by a child's cry. Llewellyn searched and discovered his boy unharmed, but nearby lay the body of a mighty wolf which Gelert had slain. The prince, filled with remorse, is said never to have smiled again. He buried Gelert here. I used to think jackalopes were real. Until I was 16 I didn't even realize they were an urban legend. Part of me still wants to believe cause they were my favorite animal. Don't let them not be real. Stop you mate. The national animal of Scotland is a unicorn. Nick, specifically Staten Island, has an urban legend about a weird creature man named Cropsy that steals children off the streets and brutally murders and eats them. Apparently the myth was super popular in the 70s and 80s I think, but as it turns out, it's totally based on a real dude. There's a documentary about him and everything. Wikipedia.org. Well, I believe in Purple Aki, but he definitely exists. This 6'5" black guy who roams Liverpool in the UK and asks to touch young men's muscles. I'd say he reached urban legend status maybe 10 years ago, before the documentaries and the Facebook Purple Aki spotted pages started springing up. Maybe he's more of a local celebrity now, but for a few years there he was like a mythological figure. Great line from his Wikipedia page. In 2016, police began investigating an allegation against the BBC of incitement to racial hatred after a Robeek complained that the 2016 documentary, The Man Who Squeezes Muscles, Searching for Purple Aki, was racist. In the film he is referred to as a big black man 3 times. And it is said that everyone has seen him or been chased by him, and everyone thinks they have spotted him and felt a shiver. One alleged victim says he is just purple and huge. I'm not sure when where I first heard it, but it's where you're driving at night and someone driving towards you has their brights on. If you flash your brights at them, they'll turn around, run you down and murder you. For gang initiation or something. I am a 30-year-old adult and I refuse to flash my brights at anyone. Ever. I've grown up in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. Sasquatch. Sam Squamch if you are from Canada. Wendigo. Yes, they are different. Just a couple hours in those deep woods and you will understand why there is a definite possibility of something hiding out in all that space. TBH, I'm more concerned with the possibility of walking up on a meth cook site than encountering a missing link man ape or a cannibal turned beast. Okay. Here there are some sharp turns that are considered haunted, as there were many accidents in the past because there weren't many street lights and people's unfamiliarity with the road. There's this turn next to an intersection that known for a pretty long time as being haunted by the victims. The road either way is a long stretched road and usually the accidents occur in nighttime where drivers or riders drive straight into a canal built higher alongside the road. However, I believe it from another perspective. The urban legend is spread so that people become aware and careful on the turns. Anyway, there's a house near the turns that legit never been resided for a long time. I've witnessed it myself from the very beginning of the house's construction, and after a few years, the house is mostly vacant. Everyone comes and goes in a short period of time. I heard rumors about it being haunted, but I don't really know and want to know. Edit, more info. My mum's family are from Grenada, and growing up my grandma would tell me stories of La Diablesse and Ligaroo. She swore she saw La Diablesse one day while stealing fruit as a child. As much as it seems silly, my grandma wasn't someone who usually believed in these things. Another time she told me about a snake that appears to people before death. She saw it once when my uncle died. I never believed it, but when I was about 6 I had a vivid dream. So vivid I'm convinced it's real. That a snake was wrapping itself around me and squeezing. Apparently that night I was hysterical and refused to sleep. 3 days later another of my uncles died. I'm a believer since. My uncle told me this when I was a child and it kept me awake many nights. He said he was driving home for work after dark. Spotted a young girl walking on side of road. Stopped and picked her up because it was very cold outside and she was only in pajamas. He gave her his coat to keep her warm and drove her home. She got out of his car and ran into house. He went home. He realized she still had his coat when he got home, so he figured he'd just stop at house on way to work next day and retrieve it. He got there, knocked on door. Mom answers door but informs him her daughter died on that road several years ago and if he gave her anything it could be retrieved at her gravesite. As this was a fairly regular occurrence, he got directions and found his coat on her tombstone. Thanks Uncle Tim for scaring the shit out of me when I was just a kid. A local bar used to be a popular hangout for the locals, but it has since been torn down. In the early 80s on a swinging Friday night, this guy in a long black trench coat walked in. He was white and really handsome. But he definitely stood out because this after all was a reservation bar and full of natives. The main thing that stood out to everyone that night was that he was very good looking and all the girls were oohing and ahhing over him. He started dancing on the dance floor with everyone and having a good time. Then a girl who was nearby looked down and the guy had hooves 4 feet. She screamed and yelled about it and he ran out the back door of the bar. A bunch of guys chased him and he ran around the corner of the building towards the front. And he just disappeared. I made up an urban legend to tell the kids. This is partly true. The truth is my town at one point had 3 separate railroad companies merge into each, then split into 3 different directions. The RR gradually went out of business and our warehouse districts burned down long ago. The myth is long ago when we had RR passing through town, there was a freak accident that causes a massive fire, killing the train's crew. Some say their spirits are still riding the rails making their stops. And on a clear night sometimes you can hear the train's horn. And the fun part is you can hear a horn. Not from a ghost train but from the RR 15 miles away. Not exciting really compared to some, but I grew up in North Mississippi and everyone who's lived there long enough and spent enough time in the woods has heard or seen cougar panther big cats. I've seen a black panther looking cat, so has other people in my family, but our neighbor saw a cougar looking cat without the black mutation before as well, and we've had people find the cougar one on trail cameras. A pinky finger is the same as the middle finger in China. Source: I asked someone from China. That an old flannel wearing woodsman named Wee Willie roamed the woods with an axe at night waiting for unsuspecting motorists to break down or pull over for intimacy. I used to speed through the woods where there aren't typically lights, but also afraid of hitting a gear and getting stuck in the middle of nowhere. My town is super haunted. The big 3 are Charaman, the Billywhack Monster, and Scary Dairy. On Old Creek Road late on misty night as you cross the bridge a man will appear and attack you. Sometimes he's on fire, but most of the time he looks like a burn victim with nothing but charred flesh remaining. The Billywhack Monster is a leftover experiment done by scientists back in the 40s. They were trying to create a super solider and goofed up. Whatever they made escaped and haunts the local hills and farmland, scarring campers and mutilating livestock. Supposedly he has the head of a goat and bleats like one, but walks around on 2 legs and is 7 feet tall. Finally, Scary Dairy is an old haunted dairy farm that may or may not have been used as a cover-up for a secret underground science facility, where they conducted less than ethical experiments. I wholeheartedly believe in the legend of Spiders Georg, who happily eats 12 spiders a day in his cave. Supposedly there are vaults hidden all around where I live. My region was pretty big during Prohibition, since Canada's just across the river, allowing bootleggers to import from there. Supposedly they'd make short tunnels off the sides of basements or even sewers to hide small stashes of alcohol. Rumor is that there's some valuable stuff in some, since they run more than just alcohol. It's not too far-fetched, but obviously I can't just go for a romp in the sewers or people's basements. Still, it's a neat little lost treasure story. Whilst at primary school in my little village in North Somerset, UK, the local vicar told us about the dancing girl who could be seen at midnight dancing on the grave of her lover at his church. She was a daughter of a well-to-do family, and he was of a lower class and died mysteriously, probably murdered by the rich family. She then killed herself by hanging from a tree in the churchyard over his grave. Anyone who saw her dancing would die swiftly soon after. Which the vicar said that he had. I think he told us around Halloween. But it could have been the last talk he ever gave us, memory fuzzy. No one ever saw him again. And the assumption was that the legend had got to him. If he knew he was leaving his position. That is one hell of a way to go out. But what if? The Beast of Gévaudan. In the south of France between 1764 and 1767 something killed 200 people. They held something with a silver bullet and the attacks stopped. This much is fact. What was it? A giant wolf? An escaped circus hyena? A werewolf? Who knows? In Maine, the headstone of a judge is supposedly cursed. The story goes that he sentenced a woman to death for witchcraft. Her last words were, "I'll dance on your grave." A mark that looks like a leg appears on his grave marker. It's been cleaned, replaced, but the leg comes back. I've seen pictures of the grave and want to believe the story so much. Edit, the last name is Buck. I think it's in Bucksport, Maine.